Hello. How's everybody?
Good.
Good. How y'all doing?
Hey, everybody. Hey, Kareem. Hope everybody's doing well. There's Kishlin. Hope everybody is doing well. What's going on this week in the world of public education? Everybody going back to work now? Yeah.
No. No.
It's awful, isn't it?
Yes. Well, summer hours, 7:30 to 5:30.
Oh, no. 4 days a week?
Yes.
Well, but, you know, you just wish your life away because you're always wishing it was Friday.
Absolutely.
I know. When I was in CMS, we used to do the 4-day weeks, and I was like, I never get to go. I don't ever get to go home on Friday. I'm still here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Something about this just doesn't seem right. Oh, man. Who we got? We got Katie. All right. Amy, Carrie.
And Dr. Lamb, you have some wonderful students this summer. I can tell you.
Well, you know, I was just getting ready to start. There's the Quetta and Anthony. I was just getting ready to start.
Well,
all the shout outs that I have this summer. I tell you what, this is like stealing money this summer. This group's been so good. I'll have to back up to the boss man on Monday.
Yeah, well, I knew they were going to make you proud. I knew that. I didn't have a doubt about it.
I knew they would. But see, I just got ready. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank everybody for being with us. This is the first ever. We've had 5 students in our classes this summer: Kayla, Ingrid, Diane, Katie, and Zelbra, who have already completed their OMA with a perfect score. I've never had that to happen. Congratulations.
Hey.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, and they were mine last semester, or either.
Well, I know. I'll give you credit.
I'm going to take credit.
I told them last week if they'd had a better instructor this semester, they'd really be doing well.
Oh no, they are great. And then I know those that were with Dr. Hamilton. I have them this summer. They were in great hands last semester. I'm just pleased as punch with this group.
Yeah. Well, the only thing is I can't get grumpy and get fired up about them not doing anything. And so it's just I don't know. Don't feel right for some reason. I need to be complaining about something. But congratulations to those 5. We appreciate the work that you do and how hard you work to get those scores. You know, the OMA is difficult, and it's difficult in best of circumstances, but under a short time frame. It is the lowest scoring of the evidences, and to have 5 start out with perfect scores, I'm going to have to see who's evaluating these things. Somebody must be putting but I know y'all are doing great work. I want to congratulate Julia News. Julia, I think, is with us. Julia's got an interview coming up. She's been selected for an interview in her district, so congratulations to her.
Great,
Julia.
Thank you.
Great. We know you're going to do well.
I'm nervous, but I think after watching what you sent me, I think I'm going to be prepared.
You'll be prepared. You'll be prepared. I mean, the whole notion here is you've got to convince people that you're a quality person that not only knows something, but is a quality person, and that they can leave you in charge and that you will do the right thing. And, you know, our folks are really getting jobs. I want to congratulate If any of you know Sean Bach, it was announced this morning that he just got a new AP position. He's not even finished. He doesn't finish his master's until this semester. He's with us in 605. Sean got a job last night at the school board meeting in Ireland Statesville. Was appointed last night. And so our folks get jobs, but again, it's about, you got to know something. You can't go in and, not know anything, try to BS them. So if you know stuff and you're a quality person, who's come through a program that stresses being a quality person, then good things happen. So congratulations to Julia for her interview, and for Sean for getting his job last night at the board meeting. We're very pleased about that. We're glad that Alan's got his laptop, is back going again. Some shout outs from discussion boards this week. I thought Stephanie on discussion board 5, Stephanie made a good point that restorative justice, that the whole point of due process discipline is to try to do the right thing for students and to try to keep as many students as we can in school and not put them out. I guess I try not to make too many broad statements, but I guess what we're trying to say is due process has 2 parts. It has the substantive part, which is what your board and the state puts in, and federal state law and your board puts in the actual due process policy. And then you have, that's the substantive part. Then the procedure is, how do we as administrators interpret and actually apply that due process to our students? And the notion here is we have a lot of leeway in that. We always need to keep an eye on restorative justice, doing the right thing for kids. And Stephanie did a good job pointing that out this week. Alan, on discussion board 4, did really good legal research in that, in discussion board 4. That's almost a roadmap as to how you should do that. Let me quickly pull that up and move
Dr.
this
Lamb,
out.
while you're going there with Julie going into her interview and anybody else, once you've gone through 601 with the APSO and the APTEL and with Dr. Lamb with the OMA, you've got a great foundation for any interview once you know the information from those 3 evidences. So, that's a strong foundation for you.
Yeah, it really is. That's why I said you got to know something. I mean, we can't get you a job if you don't know anything. You can't get you a job if you don't know anything. And so I think you're exactly right. Once you get through the OMA, you're ready. You're ready. Again, shout out to Alan on discussion on activity 4. Cyberbullying, he did a really good, thorough job of researching that, everything, all the laws and policies up and down the line. And I wanted to speak to that one again. Cyberbullying law was not repealed. Too many people try to use that as an excuse. The only thing that was repealed in the law was if you're in a Twitter war and you start losing, or it gets too rough, the language gets too nasty, and you can't claim that you've been bullied. Other than that, the law was in place. And as Alan pointed out, cyberbullying is a crime. You got to involve the police. That is a crime. It is not just bad social behavior. It is a crime. You got to involve the police in cyberbullying. And then finally, different ones of you mentioned on our weekly activity for this week on MTSS intervention. Thought we had a good point that MTSS is not RTI. RTI can be a part, response to intervention can be a part of MTSS. Dig a little deeper and know what MTSS is at your school. Frank mentioned that they're moving slowly at his school. You got till July 1 to get it up and running. If you're in North Carolina, it's been mandated. So hopefully everybody's going. But please remember, MTSS works with all students. It's in a tier system. Response to intervention is just part of that for the remedial part. But know what intervention is at your school and in your school district. Because those are the kind of questions you're going to get asked in an interview. They're going to know if you know anything. They're going to ask you about hiring teachers. That's why I say know what goes on in your district. That's why we had you out asking people all summer long all these different things, because when you get interviewed, they're going to ask you if you know these kinds of things. You got to know something. You got to impress somebody that you know something and that you're a quality person, that won't do like Barney did. If you watch Andy Griffith's show, you know what happened in the first season when Andy had to go to Raleigh. As soon as Andy left town, Barney hired, deputized Otis to town drunk and gave Gomer a gun. Well, neither one of those are good ideas. That's not, you got to convince people that you won't do something that dumb when you're in charge. So you got to know something. You got to impress people that you know that you're a quality person as well. And I think that's fully doable. Dr. Stedman, are you answering any chats tonight?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Kareem just asked the question. He said, is the 90-day policy law? I spoke with 2 administrators that say they usually test the student before the 90 days is up.
All right. The 90-day EC is that you can, when you get to that 3rd level intervention, when you get to that, now we're not talking about the 90 days, up to 90 days of MTSS. You can't test a kid during MTSS, because you haven't even gotten to the 90-day EC part of it yet. Remember, MTSS sits on top of the referral process for exceptional children. That lasts 90 days or nearly 90 days. Now, during MTSS, if that's not working, then you start the 90-day EC process. And so when you get to that 3rd level in the EC process is started. MTSS was not, no matter how many days we had them in MTSS, it wasn't working. None of the tiers worked for them. We put them in the EC referral process. We did 30 days of anecdotals, 30 days of the 1st level intervention. Sometime during that last 30 days, sometimes districts will go ahead and refer kids for testing because of the availability of the psychologist and that the interventions aren't working. About halfway through the first intervention, the first 30-day intervention didn't work. We tried the second 30-day intervention. We're into it halfway through and it's not working. I have seen kids referred a little bit early, but that's a risk. You're supposed to give them 90. You're supposed to give them the 90. Now, in practice, sometimes when a parent says, this is not working, can we go? What they do is they get parents to sign off on a request. That's what they do. Can the school end it early on their own? No. But when a parent and the child is frustrated, they've been through MTSS, none of that worked. They've been through 30, 60. They're on another 90 days in EC, and it's not worked. They've tried 2 different levels of intervention. I have seen parents say, let's go ahead and test. And the parent requests, and then that absolves the school of waiting the 90. Can the school go early? No. But if the parent signs, they can.
Okay, have Karina unmute himself. He still has a question he needs to ask.
Okay.
But I was just following up with that, and I was saying that both of the administrators said that they normally get the parent to sign off on permission at the beginning of the process.
Well, they can do that. If you go through 90 days of MTSS and the kid's not doing anything, you can go to the parent and say, hey, we're going to refer them for EC. It's another 90. Do you want to go ahead and sign off on putting the testing now? And sometimes parents will. I don't like that because I think sometimes parents might get buyer's remorse on that, and they might come back and say we were coerced. And if you didn't do anything, if you're in that last 30 days and you get parents to sign off, I think you're in the clear because you've made a good faith effort. But if you have them sign off at the beginning of the 90-day, the formal 90-day EC process, and you didn't do any of it, and then they came back later on and said, well, Dale said, that they'd start spending my kid out of school if we didn't sign this to get them, and that's always the threat. We're all adults here. We know what the threat is. When your kid gets in trouble, we're going to start suspending him out of school if you don't sign this paper to get him tested. We know how that goes. And you know, I would not want to have to be in federal court and defend myself on that down on 4th Street in Charlotte, where the federal courthouse is. I would not want to be on 4th Street trying to tell somebody, well, I was just looking out for the kid. Let me see now, you threatened his parents to put him out of school and made them sign these paperwork, but you were looking out for his interest. That'd be a hard sell. That would be a hard sell. That's a great question. That's a great question. That would be a hard sell.
And if they bring an advocate, you're going to lose.
Oh yeah. Or if the Children's Law Center gets behind it, you just might as well pay up front.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we just had, when I was there, we already had checks made out to them, $6,000 a pop here. We already have them made out and signed. They get, you know, everybody doesn't have that, but, you know, you do the right thing, whether there's a Children's Law Center, federal courthouse, you do the right thing because it's the right thing. But especially in larger districts where there are advocates, where there are advocacy groups like the Children's Law Center, that, you know, you're required, well, I won't say required. You are strongly encouraged as an attorney in North and South Carolina to do pro bono work. Now, if you belong to a firm, they can require you to do pro bono work. And all the big firms in Charlotte require, and the big cities require pro bono work. It is highly recommended for everybody, but required by some firms. Well, they would do their pro bono work with the Children's Law Center. And so, I mean, they had a cadre of lawyers that, you know, wasn't costing anybody anything, so they had plenty of time. And so you did not want to tangle them any more than you had to. So I think that's a great, I don't know my answer was clear, but that's great. I would not cut short the MTSS. I would only cut short if parents came to me, and I would only do it in that last 30 days. I would not do it in the MTS, and I would only do it in the 90-day formal EC. I'd only do it in the last 30. I think if you did, you're taking a personal risk if you do it before then. That's just my opinion. From a lot of experience in this area. I've still got scars on my body from the Children's Law Center that you know I'll carry to my grave. So I've done this more than anybody ought to have to. All right, wonderful question. All right, so tonight's case study. I've been so excited for this. I have been so excited for the case study. Make sure you read chapter 6 and 8. And this is about Bobby. This is about privilege. This is a lot of things, but we got to focus on the law. We go back to 288, 115C, 288. You know, we know the principal assigns grades, not teachers. We talked about the policy of the district that this happened in is you could fail the assignment, not the year. That would be a zero tolerance, and we know those are illegal. Because you get no due process with zero tolerance. And so the policy said you can fail the assignment, but also understanding that cheating is a disciplinary thing, and we have to go by whatever the handbook says. We've looked at the Charlotte-Mecklenburg handbook on cheating. You know, most of the time we let the kids make the work up at a lesser, most districts, the most you can do is 1 day of ISS. You definitely can't exclude a kid for a year. Now, we got some feedback about the grading system. You know, every district has a grading system, just like me. Gardner-Webb has one. I have one that I have standardized throughout the MELS program, as I am the program coordinator, as you know. We do that. And so on the course overview of your classes, and you know last semester and this semester, it has the points available. And these are weighted so that each of the evidence is, because we do 6-hour classes, which the university recognizes 2 3-hour classes. We weight the evidences at 30% each, the discussion boards at 20%, and the case studies at roughly 20%. But because the OMA and the SCIP are the state exam, They are state exams. They go into your portfolio. They are state exams. We follow the state, which is you can't count that more than 30%. We count it 30%. Because we are a subcontractor for DPI. In North Carolina, an exam can't count, a state exam can't count more than 30%, even for licensure purposes. And so if you sat down and did all the numbers and figured it all out, you'd say, it's 20, 30, 20, 20. 30 each for the evidences, 20 for the activities, 20 for the case studies. Well, there's a reason why. That's mandated by law. As you know, you can't count one class assignment. Class assignments can't count but 10% for the whole year. And one would certainly not be worth more than 50% of the grade. So that's kind of the setup. So tonight, to start out with tonight, I am going to start with this one. This is Diane, Stephanie, Kayla, and Kenneth. So you folks, you get to start first. This was my pick of the litter this week. Kenneth, two thumbs up. 2 thumbs up from Kenneth. Thank you for that, Kenneth. And so I'll go ahead and whoever would like to kick this one off and get started. Now on deck is going to be Alan, Frank, Samantha. Y'all are going to be on deck. So here we go.
Okay. So I am the spokesperson, but the whole group really collaborated on this. And so I shared the talking notes with them and all of that. So they will be jumping in as we go through. So we just wanted to start by talking about the key points of the case. Bobby Henson did cheat on a social studies project, a project that was worth more than 50% of his overall grade. When confronted by his teacher, he did admit to using his older brother's project as his own. He was upset, he cried, he stated that his commitment to his baseball team consumed his time and he was unable to complete the assignment. Mrs. Barton's work policy dictated that this result in Bobby getting a 0 on the assignment, which required him to attend summer school, caused him to miss playing on the summer baseball tournament. The school handbook stated that any kind of cheating may require a failing grade by the teacher. Bobby and his mother both signed a letter indicating awareness of the contents of the handbook. Then we have the other extenuating factor that comes into the case, which is Bobby's uncle, who is a prominent community member who in turn complicated the case. The principal went to his superintendent and was offered help in that area. And the case offered a glimpse at several underlying issues within the school that was way greater than just this instance of cheating.
That is correct.
So what should the principal's course of action be? Well, we determined that this case had so many more elements than just this incident of one student cheating.
That's correct.
One, a lack of principal awareness of teacher grading policies. 2, a lack of principal and teacher relationships. 3, a lack of clear communication. And 4, unclear grading policies. So first and foremost, the principal should have already been aware of teacher grading policies, especially if they are not common across departments. So in my Zoom meeting, we all talked about that most of our schools have mandated grading policies within departments. And if that's not the case, then to us, the key factor into this case was that this principal was unaware of a harsh grading policy in a class. And we later go on to say that if Bobby, how many other kids who have done something like this have failed this class and fallen through the cracks because they didn't have an advocate like Bobby's uncle. They didn't have someone in their corner who they knew would catch this if something happened. Principals should be attending PLC meetings within departments. Not only does this increase principal awareness, but it also fosters and develops relationships between principals and teachers. That was another key factor that we had. It seems that the fact that this teacher automatically went to get her union rep showed that there is no trust between the principal and the teacher. And we would like to know, if we had time to dig further, is this just an isolated incident between this teacher and the administrator, or is it school-wide? What is the school culture like? So then we talked about due process. Although the student was allowed to tell his side of the story, there was no due process in this case because there was no protocol or chain of events after the cheating had been discovered. Mrs. Barton discovered the cheating, confronted the student, and informed him of his failing grade and went straight to her union rep. I think all of us talked about how there is a order of events that happen when something like this happens. Like you said, Dr. Lamb, cheating is more of a disciplinary, a behavioral action. And so what the teacher should have done right away is either called the parents or called the principal or had a conference with administration or both at the same time. The fact that she confronted the student, she bulldozed the student, she bulldozed the principal because in the case study it said that she expected the principal to uphold that standard of the kid failing. So she completely bulldozed it, and then there was no mention of parent contact, and then she went straight to her union rep for backup. So she did not use due process. The substantive due process does not apply here because the grading policy itself is unfair, and there was no procedural due process because there was no chain of events that would surmount to procedural due process. Anybody want to jump in? I'm like talking so fast.
You're doing great.
You're doing great.
I can start with the standards of arbitrary and capricious.
Please do.
Okay, so from there, we talked about the standard of arbitrary and capricious. To the group, it appeared that this case did not involve the standard of arbitrary, but more of the standard of capricious.
That's correct.
Arbitrary is defined as being based on random choice and kind of unfair, whereas capricious is more of feeling. It's more feeling involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher used a vague policy against the student without due process or any consideration for the whole student. Capricious, on the other hand, is decisions given to sudden and unaccountable changes based on mood and behavior. When reading between the lines in this case, we determined that if we dug a little further, we would uncover history between the student and this teacher. Therefore, the actions of the teacher would fall under the standard of capricious. Our next piece is the 4 ethical paradigms and whether they relate or do not relate to this case. The first paradigm is justice. There was no justice in this case because the student failed the course and had to attend summer school and miss his baseball tournament. There was no due process or mediation present at all, and there was no parental contact or involvement from what we could see. The next paradigm is care. There was no care exhibited from the teacher because she did not take into account the whole student. This student and teacher seemed to have no relationship, or at least probably not a positive one. Critique is the next paradigm. The student and principal need to critique this grading policy as it is unfair to students. How many other students, as Kayla was talking about earlier, have suffered this because of this unfair policy and have fallen to the wayside because they did not have an advocate for them like Bobby did and his uncle? And then finally, profession. The teacher lacked professionalism when handling this situation because the first action from the teacher should have been either contacting administration or contacting parents. In a perfect world, probably both. Instead, the teacher bulldozed the student and the principal and went straight to her union rep for backup, stating that she expected the administration to uphold the school's handbook ban on cheating. And as we were talking about earlier, it seems like there was a very, very unhealthy relationship between the teacher and the principal, which begged the question of really there needs to be a conversation, or maybe that principal needs to look inward and say, okay, what have I done as the leader of this school to make it the environment so that a teacher feels like they need to do that in a situation that we felt it was easy. An outcome about cheating is probably an easy fix between the administration, the parents, and the student. And bringing in a union rep, I think, makes it a little bit more murky and, just makes it a tough situation. So our outcome at the end, we said it is a very sticky spot because of who Bobby's uncle is and needing to maintain trust with this entire staff. But it is also unfair to let Bobby fail because of one assignment. The fair outcome to this situation would have been to allow Bobby to resubmit or complete another for some or partial credit. The student was subjugated to an unfair policy that harmed his grade and possibly his future. As we know, many students depend on sports for college scholarships. Tim needs to have a crucial conversation with his teacher about where they stand in their relationship and should be open and honest about the problem at hand. I want to support you, Mrs. Barton, but your gradings policy is unfair, and you did not follow due process or school-defined procedures to deal with this type of incident. Although teachers have the innate right to involve their union rep whenever they feel necessary, it was concerning to our group that the teacher went straight to her union rep over something as easily handled as cheating. Tim needs to create stakeholders in his staff through building clear and consistent relationships with teachers so that when issues such as this arise, they can be handled fairly. Due process can be given, and the school and staff do not lose credibility with parents and the community.
Yay!
All I can say is I am proud of my children.
Hey, really good.
Thank you.
All right, I want to make a couple of points before we move on. I was in a doctoral dissertation earlier today, and the question was asked, what would it take for this program to see success in schools? And the doctoral candidate that was defending said, well, we'd have to see an 80% buy-in from teachers. And I thought, you must be on dope. I've never known any high school faculty that would do 80% buy-in. And so my point is this: we can set all the grading policies in the world, but we got to get out there as administrators into those classrooms and know what's going on, as y'all have pointed out, which is very astute, that I can tell you what the grading policy is, but I better go and check to make sure that you're following. And this notion that, well, it says that they may fail. Nobody in their right mind believes that you cheat on one assignment, you fail for the year. You know, you get
and I think that was like a key point for our group. And I think Kenny even said it in our chat, was like, what kind of teacher would let a student fail over one assignment?
Exactly. I mean, that's just like, me and Kenneth are out back smoking, and they take Kenneth in and send him back to class. They take me out back and shoot me. That's arbitrary and capricious. They got me and not Kenneth, but you shot me for smoking. Smoking's not good. But I don't think that's the appropriate punishment. What teacher would do that?
And there was definitely you could just tell through reading it that this teacher had no relationship with this student, because I think any of us as educators, if we saw a student and we knew that they had cheated on an assignment, I like to think that we would show grace to that student, which is what we're in this job to do, and not fail them over one assignment.
Thank you.
Exactly. And coming from a middle school standpoint, I mean, we building the whole child and educating the whole child, and sports is an aspect of that child. And, at that age, they're at the mercy of their parents as well. So sometimes their parents are pushing them into the sport. So the kid has not a lot of control over it. And that's where the parent takes them to do. So it really, that's where that policy of the wording was there, that I think, the principal could say, well, it's leaving it up for judgment so that you can take everything into consideration.
Right. But I think I love the operative phrase there, the grace. I'm depending upon grace to get in heaven myself. I'm gonna slide in under the gate like Indiana Jones. It's gonna be so close on me. I'm depending upon grace to get me in, because I know I won't deserve it. And see, that's what we have to understand. Especially my wife, 30-year retired middle school teacher, will tell you, you have to have grace with those kids, because they don't deserve it. But you got to find it in your heart. Now, we posed the question, Dr. Stedman and I, and last semester we had Dr. Massengill. I don't know if he's with us yet tonight or not, and Dr. Tobias, and they may join us in a little bit. And so we posed the question: it's 2 old retired principals and 2 younger sitting principals. What would you do with this teacher? I was impressed by Dr. Tobias when she said she got to go. Couldn't have somebody like this working on my staff. Not somebody who would do this to a child.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. It's unfair. It is indicative of the relationship between the administrator. I'm sorry for the crying child.
No, it's okay.
It shows her lack of compassion. Why is she in this job if this is how she's going to act?
Well,
Stephanie said about educating the whole child in middle school. As someone who has dealt with thieving incidents, and I'm sure we all have, would it not have been a better approach to use this as a teaching moment for that student instead of feeling their fate over one assignment? This whole thing just blew my mind.
Yeah. Exactly. But it's very relevant to today and talked about in terms of privilege and forgiveness, teachable moments, that, you know, if one of us is a bad apple, that makes us all a bad apple. I mean, these are things that are in our society today. And this is one of those kind of watershed for as moving into administration. And it kind of gets you to the understanding that you have to, if it comes to a choice between protecting students and protecting teachers, you know, to change your lens to move from one side of the desk to the other, you have to understand that you've got to protect kids. That's what they hired you for. You have to, and if it comes to a choice between teachers or kids, you got to choose kids. That's what you do. That's what you're there for, is to do the right thing for them.
Dr. Lamb, you may want to expound on this. Katie made a comment. She said, when I was still in the classroom and made the transition from middle school English to high school English, she said she was shocked by how much individual leverage the high school teachers had in grading work, apart from all policies and guidelines. She said her own daughter is now at the high school and she's having to fight this same issue as a parent.
Okay, this is it. That's why it's the first one. This one has so many different facets, as Kayla was talking about and Kenneth mentioned, and Stephanie. This has so many different facets. That's why it's our first one. But this is an everyday thing if you're a high school principal. That's why I told you a couple of weeks ago. You said, well, why in the world are we starting something as mundane as grading policy? If you're a high school principal, this is your life every day. It's, you know, calculating who gets in the honor society, who's going to be valedictorian, who's going to be salutatorian, who's going to get in advanced classes, who's going to get in AP and IB, grade point average, all these different things. And you're exactly right. High school teachers, it's like fighting a bear. It doesn't matter what that's what we're talking about today. In that doctoral dissertation, that the question was asked of the doctoral student, what would it take for this program to be successful? And she said, well, we'd have to have at least 80% buy-in from the high school teachers district-wide. Good luck with that. That's not going to happen. It's hard enough to make them do stuff to keep you out of jail that's against the law, much less do the right thing. You're exactly right. You got to fight high school teachers every day. And they're never going to be like puppies. They're never going to roll over and let you tickle their belly. You have to whip them every day. You never get a day off from that. And I'm one of them. I was a high school teacher a long time before I was a high school principal. And I'll be the first to tell you, they are a tough lot. And these are the kinds of things that you got to get into. You got to watch this every day. It doesn't matter how many times you post, this is our grading policy. You better be watching them like a hawk. And I don't know why, but English teachers are the worst, followed by math teachers. And then people like me who, pardon?
That's unfair, Dr. That's unfair.
Of course it's unfair, and I was going to say, and then, you know.
That's exactly at our school, the ones you have to worry about. And I'm
the senior English teacher, you know, she sits on the right hand of God, right on the arm of his throne, or at least she thinks. We all know that.
Dr. Lamb,
all know that.
Ingrid made a great comment. She said, no one ever talks about grading. We all take outdated approaches and no one says anything.
That's exactly right. And we're going to have some of these critical conversations about grading, about privilege, about grace, about following the policy, making it fair and equitable for everybody, not being arbitrary. These are the things, this is the core of grading. Ingrid is exactly right. This is the hard conversations that you've got to have.
And Dr. Lamb, I can say this very quickly. When I was a high school principal, when it came time for graduation, I had to fight teachers tooth and nail because of one little thing they were going to keep a child from graduating. So I had to make the hard decisions. I didn't care whether they liked me or not. I was going to do what was right for the child.
I can tell you the best thing that I ever did, and I forget who, and y'all have already figured out, I wasn't smart enough to figure this out on my own. I forget who told me, but I made myself the senior class sponsor as the principal, high school principal. I had 6 APs and 2 admins, and I made myself the senior class sponsor. And so what I did is I brought all the students in about midway through the spring, and we sat down and we looked at their transcripts. Now, this is a large high school. We had 6 APs, 3,000 kids. You understand, but we brought everybody in, brought them in groups at a time. And we worked on it together, kind of me and them. They worked helping one another, trying to figure out their credits and make sure that we weren't going to have somebody pull one of those shenanigans where somebody at the last minute doesn't get to walk. I hate to say it, but we had to do that because the school had a history of doing that. And sometimes you had to fight teachers tooth and nail. That's exactly right. And you would think that teachers would want to do the right thing, but now in their mind, they're doing the right thing. But kind of my summation on this before we're going to move on here to the next groups. My summation on this is this. In a small way, we all have to recognize our biases, and we have to admit, and we have to try to work through those kinds of things. One of the things that I have to check my bias on is writing. You notice when you get your grades from me, you either get a 0 or 100. I don't give 70s, I don't give 80s, I don't give 90s. Because what I found was I was biased in my grading. I wasn't grading on content, I was deducting points for writing and syntax, when I should have been focused on content. So years ago, I quit doing the 70, 85, whatever. You either get 100 or you get a 0. And that checked my bias against people who wrote differently than I write, or when I read it, it doesn't read like I would have written it, or like I would read it. And that was one of the biases that I had to learn about in myself a long time ago. You know, it's going to be different than what I wrote because I didn't write it, but I can't hold people to that standard. I have to hold them to the standard of the profession, not what I would do. And so that's one of those conversations you have to have with yourself. This was an excellent presentation. You did an excellent job. You hit all the right notes. My heart is warmed that you looked, that you thought about the child and what's best for the child. So again, Diane, Stephanie, Kayla, and Kenneth, excellent job this week. Now I want to hear from Alan, Frank, Samantha. Let me move that out of the way. I'll close that one. And it'll take me a second to figure out which one it is. Okay.
It's the gray one on the right.
This one?
Nope, one left. There you go.
That one? Got it. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've got to move this out of the way where I can see. All right. Here we go.
Okay. I'll start by speaking for our group. And again, this case study, I think the first group did amazing. So yeah, hopefully we can fill their shoes pretty well. But we had a Zoom meeting about this last week because the fact that I was going to be without technology, so my group stepped up. So thumbs up to them. But basically, what we came up with is our relevant facts. And again, we talk about how, yes, the student didn't do the right thing, but did own up to it when asked about it. And yes, that is absolutely the truth. The kid did not do the right thing. So, okay, we've got that. We can deal with that from here on out. But what the teacher did, first thing I saw is that teacher basically took that signed agreement and held it against the student and the parent. Now, yes, if I was a parent in that meeting, that probably wouldn't be a fun meeting for the teacher, but that's another day. But the other thing that I saw is I think that student's uncle has too much influence on the school's athletic and academic program.
Privilege.
It's so much privilege, and it's just so much money. And I don't think, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, but I don't think that was a very good thing to have involved there, because being
not healthy.
Being a board member and being a sponsor of a baseball tournament that gives scholarships, that doesn't work. It doesn't always mesh together like everybody thinks. So, and being from the athletic background, I've seen it fail more than I've seen it succeed, probably 8 out of 10 times. So, had the grading policy not been so stringent to where it was so off the rails, the case would have never been an issue. It would have been a situation where they worked their way through it and they moved on. There would have been no union stuff, and we'll come back to that in a minute. And again, this is the thing that eats me up, because we talked about this in our group. I can tell you at my school, and I know my people at our school, in my group, we have a uniform grading policy in our department and really across the school. Mm-hmm. And so there was no uniform grading policy that, could prevent bias. And the other thing that I always look at, and we'll come to it in a minute, was what is she teaching? Social studies. What are the other social studies grading policies look like? Are they the same? Because what if Bobby wants out of her class and gets out of the class and goes to a different teacher's class? Is the grading policy going to be the same? That carries a lot of weight, and because it's got to be uniform. If I have a kid that comes over from James Island Charter High School and he comes to my high school, I want him to walk in and know exactly where he is on the grading scale, because it's the same thing. But the principal's course of action, where we took up, yes, the principal should uphold the ban on cheating, because that is absolutely, that's district policy, and impropriety is a very serious offense. We know that, but the teacher's got to make changes to ensure that one singular assignment doesn't cost the student an opportunity to pass a class. That is not like that. When it comes down to if it's one assignment, so I'm probably thinking 55, 60% of the grade, no matter what that kid did in the other category, if there was another category, which it seems to be there probably is, but there's no way that kid was going to pass if he failed. And while it's the job of the teacher to prepare students for life, I think this case could have been handled a lot different with an alternate assignment. Or if Bobby's so into baseball, how about suspending him from athletic activities until you get it figured out? I mean, that's a, athletic activities is a privilege. Extracurricular sports is not a right, it's a privilege. And everything you do in the classroom owns up to that and adds to that privilege. So for due process, I felt like the policy on cheating is fair based on the merits of the infraction. However, even though the policy is clear, it's unfair based on the capriciousness of a failing grade. And when we come to standards of arbitrary and capricious, this was arbitrary at best and capricious for sure. I have no doubts in my mind about that. So we go into the 4 ethical paradigms, and these just lit up so easily to see it. But again, justice, unfair grade and punishment, we know that was not something that was in place. A grade weight is arbitrary and capricious regardless of the grade. It was failing and worth more than half the final grade. That's unfair. That's just unfair. Nobody can sell that to me any way at all. I could not take that, nor could any of my group. The punishment doesn't fit the crime. So he admits his guilt and explains that his poor choice was the result of feeling too much pressure with sports in school. Okay, that's an issue that can be dealt with administratively. But again, kind of going back to failing, the whole situation, putting him into a situation where he'd have to go to summer school, that didn't work for us. The perception of justice, and there's a chance that requiring the teacher to amend this grading policy will result in the perception that principal's playing favorites because of Bobby's uncle. But regardless of what the misperceptions or misconceptions are, it's in the best interest of the school and to do what's right for the students, always. And that's to step out. That's our school motto, is do what's best for kids. So the grading policy does not promote, equity or fairness in any way, shape, or form. So for paradigm number 2, for care, we look at it, and I looked at it from relationships, collaboration, shared decision making connections. So if the teacher is part of a PLC that examines performance, would this harsh grading, situation occurred? And how would the collaboration with other teachers have impacted the teacher's perspective? That's a question that I had asked. Nurturing it and encouraging, we came up with the resulting punishment could have lasting, implications resulting for more than just a few weeks of summer school. not playing in a baseball tournament could mean missing out on being recruited for college. Now, I'll get to that in a minute, but a nurturing teacher would never want a child to face such harsh repercussions because of one choice. Discipline and support, because, and let me just say this, it wasn't because he broke any laws. You know, it would be one thing if he, you know, brought a weapon to school or something.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a law. This is a policy that, you know, policies are most of the time pretty set in stone, but can be living, breathing documents if you do them right because of this situation here. Discipline and support. The teacher's heavy-handed grading focuses solely on discipline rather than supporting students as they grow. And the grading policy should never be punitive in any way, shape, or form. Going to paradigm number 3 for critique, it's power and social class. The uncle's position and influence impact the situation. There is an implication that he is well-to-do and perhaps even entitled. And the action the principal takes could potentially lead to a power struggle where corrupted morals are exposed. So with human rights, the principal has the opportunity to right a wrong. And the possible power struggle situations are principal and the teachers union, of course, principal and the teacher, yes. And I believe we even mentioned it, we didn't put it in here, we mentioned that teacher probably wouldn't last long if we were involved with that, and that's been covered. But principal and the uncle, that's another thing that has to be straightened out, and the teacher and the uncle. And I don't think that's going to be a good end for the teacher, because apparently the uncle wields a lot of power, but there's a lot of power struggles that could be involved there. So that takes us to paradigm number 4, and accountability. And the teacher desires to teach accountability for one's own social and academic success, but the student made a wrong choice and should receive a consequence. That's not out of the question. That's absolutely necessary. But in best interest, the punishment is morally wrong. The punishment could be considered illegal because the grades are not to be punitive, and the punishment impedes students' academic success. So educators, here we are models, we are role models, and the teacher has an opportunity to reflect on and make changes in her grading practices and kind of gets to be the hero here. So the teacher has an opportunity to model ethical behavior as he deals with the teacher, the teachers union, the student, and the uncle. So that's kind of our paradigm. So that's where we are. Our takeaways, there's a lot of them, but you know, and you can, if you follow through, you'll see our names on there. But Frank said students make mistakes. And they should have the opportunity to overcome them. We don't disagree with that. The grading policy was excessive. One assignment should never hold more than 50% of a grading period. So academic integrity, you know, requires students to take credit for ideas that their efforts that are their own. And academic dishonesty occurs when a student submits fraudulent work or gives and receives, you know, an unauthorized assistant, creates an unfair advantage, tampers with the work of others, engages in misconduct that hinders learning by others, and cheats by any means on tests, quizzes, exams, or any other ethical academic behaviors. So I guess I know you guys can read for yourself, so I'll kind of go past a little bit here, but decisions of right and wrong shouldn't be based on affluent members of the community. That's one thing, we know that. The principal has an opportunity to do ethical thing of overturning the punishment. There must be care in how the teacher's handled, explaining the weight of the penalty and the need for change in the grading policy. And finally, there's an opportunity for all involved to reflect and grow from the process. And that's kind of something that we thought we kind of kept coming back to, reflection and growth, because, you know, the biggest room in the world is the room for improvement. And here we go. So my takeaways for this is I think no one's above reproach when it comes to student rights. And as much as it can be said, right is right and wrong is wrong. I work for Publix, and that's their saying. So it sounds crazy, but it's true. Grading policy was well beyond egregious, which I suspect is why a union member was involved, because that too is overstepping the lines. The policy says that it may require a failing grade to be assigned. It does not say shall or will. Too much subjective discretion is given to the teacher in this case. Even though the parents have signed the handbook awareness, I'm not convinced that the grading policy is fair, and no one could ever convince me that it's fair. And it says may require. That teacher wanted to show what kind of power she has, I believe. This is a classic academics versus extracurriculars activities confrontation. We've seen this before. The side wielding most influence is on the side of the student, which is Bobby's uncle. There's a total conflict of interest. The punishment was capricious, however. And as for the scholarship issue, I cite Menard versus LHS Louisiana High School Athletic Association, that scholarships are not a protected property. They are an opportunity at best. So there's that. And I took that out of our textbook that we use. Ms. Davis, she said that this is a good case study. An effective assessment should force you to examine what it means to be a successful teacher, where your students are now, and how you help them get to where they need to go. The grading policy for this school needs to be fair and promote growth for all students. The principal should have the responsibility to ensure that learning and students remain the main focus of the education. The punishment does not fit the offense. We as leaders must look at every aspect of student behavior, not just in terms of what the student did right or wrong. And that's absolutely true. And then finally, Ms. Schuler, I believe the two factors brought this case to the principal's attention. The first factor is an imbalanced grading policy. The second was the student's connections to an person of influence. Unfortunately, injustices often go unnoticed or overlooked by administration until someone with influence is affected. It is important that in these situations, the principal make decisions based on what is fair and what is best for the student. It is also important that teachers feel they are supported by administration. When faced with disagreements about grading policies, principals should treat the teacher as a respected professional. The principal can guide the teacher to reflect on their policies and make appropriate changes that can be implemented to better meet the needs of the students. And so that was our take on the case. And I'm sorry we don't have our reference in there, but my reference was from the textbook that we wrote, and that was, I believe, out of chapter 8. So that's our take on it.
Very good.
Thank you, sir.
One of the things I want to kind of throw in between here, I am not anti-teacher. I want to support teachers, but in this case, it would be illegal to support teachers. And that's one of the things that you've got as a new administrator. That's one of the traps that you've got to avoid coming out of the classroom is oh, I still remember what it's like. I'm going to always support teachers. Well, I want you to always support them when they're right and when they're supporting kids, but not otherwise. And you've got to make sure that you do the right thing, the legal thing, the ethical thing, the moral thing. Very good. All right, let's see. I'm gonna go. There we go. All right. We have Tracy, Eric, Teresa, Chaitra. Anybody here from this group? Still with us that wants to go through this one? All right.
I think we're here.
Okay.
Here.
I saw Eric earlier. All right, let's see. There's that. Wait a minute. There's Tracy. All right, kick us off, Tracy.
All right.
You don't have to go through all the ins and outs of the case. Let's see. Let's kind of get over here. Y'all are. I love this. I love how they summarize theirs. All right, takeaways.
Yeah, we went straight to the point, guys. Not gonna lie with it. So I will have to say, with our case study, I really enjoyed being able to work with my group on this, and I felt like it really kind of brought out some different pieces, because all of my group is high school, except for me, who is middle school, and I currently work in a K-8. So I get to bring in a little bit of the elementary and middle school perspective to some things too. So it's really interesting to hear my high school people kind of go, because high school is a whole new ballgame. And I have to say, I don't think I ever want to be a principal or an AP in a high school. So I feel for everyone in that. But our key takeaways that we really focused on was that due process piece, particularly with the procedural. And we took that from our page 146 out of the quick reference guide. And it was the policies and rules and regulations to be carried out in a fair manner. So was this whole process carried out in a fair manner? And a lot of you guys have already hit on the whole piece of the grading policy. That grading policy really was not fair to the student. And I think that was kind of where we focused on that justice ethical paradigm for number 2. So those two policies need to be seen as fair. Is the discipline policy with the school and cheating fair? Do you give them straight 10 days and have them be out that entire time? Does it really require that severity of it? Along with the school handbook contracts, because that was one thing that we kind of picked out on as well. And then the teacher's grading policy in terms of following the school guidelines for grading, and did she actually follow through with that final assignment correctly and fairly? I don't know if my group members want to say anything else about those first two before we move to the third one. Nope. All right.
Eric said go.
Right. And then the third one was, we focused on that school handbook. Are those fair and reasonable decisions to follow through on those policies of the handbook? And that's kind of where our whole group discussion focused around, was the handbook, and kind of like that handbook is something that is approved by the Board of Education. It is approved and it is signed by the parents. It is something that, like, our first 10 days, we go over the handbook, like pretty much book for book during our like success time. So like our students know it when they sign that contract. And so knowing that, like, we make sure we abide by that handbook decision. And, with elementary and middle school, we talked a lot about it, or I taught in the sense of, we follow that handbook, like that's our whole goal. But with high school, it can be a little funky sometimes, especially when you have all the elements of teaching the whole child and that grading policy. There's my summed up. Because everyone else knows everything else.
One of the other things we talked about in our group that was also touched on tonight was just the relationship that was not established in our classroom. I think all of us talked about how we are presented with cheating all the time, and it just would have never gotten to the principal from the start. And that's not bad management, that's just dealing with certain things in your classroom.
That's
so
correct.
Just the fact that the relationship was not established between her and her students, it clearly he somewhat respects her, because he admitted to it. I don't know what high school student would admit to cheating, but he admitted to it. And that way he put the ball back in her court to kind of build the relationship and handle it right then. And she didn't do that. So we just kind of also touched on that as well, which I think is a main idea that could eliminate a lot of everything else in the case study.
Of course.
And I think too, though, like one thing that just, and I'll be honest, like I'll put this in my reflection, but I think it's also the culture of that school. Like one thing that really stuck out to our case group that we were talking about was that she brought a union rep with her.
Yeah.
To a meeting with the principal. And like, and we all said it, I wouldn't necessarily call my principal in for a cheating, like I would handle it. Like that's how it would be pretty much. But, like that culture in that school seems to be a little odd as well if you're sitting there bringing in a union rep for your first talk with a principal about this kind of issue.
Well, usually what that means is the principal has said, we're going to follow the policies, and this is the policy. And you have teachers who think their name's on the deed, not the door. So I'm not changing my policy. So generally that's what you get. And some of you will be lucky enough one of these days that you'll become a first-time high school principal. And when you walk in that first day, it seems like half of them's goal is to see if they can beat you the first day. They come in and start this. They hammer you to start with, and that's just the process.
Dr. Lamb, can I get myself in trouble for a minute and
sure
play devil's advocate here for a second?
Sure.
I think that we have to be careful, maybe not to be hasty in demonizing the teacher too quickly.
Oh yeah.
This case study is pretty vague. As far as details, we don't know how Bobby was doing in this class before he took this final, and I think we're a little quick to demonize the teacher policy when we don't even know what it is.
Well, but the case said she counted the assignment as more than 50% of the final grade, and that's what it hinges on.
But we don't know how the final itself was weighted.
Well, but say that, but the case here is, and it's intentionally vague for that, in that to make you focus on, is that equitable? Is it fair? Is it legal to manipulate the grading scale? Obviously, that does not follow the district's policy. The district cannot have a policy where anything can count more than 30%. Even the state exam can only count 30%. And so the issue is not his grade before or after this cheating incident. The issue is the teacher intentionally manipulated the grading scale that was already set. It's set by the state, and the locals adopt it. manipulated the grading scale to make an assignment which can't count more than, in total, all the assignments for the year can't count more than 10%, and manipulated one to count more than 50%, and then said, I'm going to my union, you know, come get me, basically, is this case is, are you willing to fight her? Are you willing to fight the, you know, are you willing to fight the good fight for the good reason? Are you going to roll over? What are you going to do? The teacher drew the line in the sand, said, I curse your grading policy. I am the high school teacher. I will set my own. This one assignment is worth more than half of the grade. I don't care what your district policy is. This is what I am going to do. And so, but you're right. There's always more to it than we could write every little thing out here. But I want you to focus on the teacher said, I am going to make this one assignment count more than half of the grade, the yearly grade.
Where does it say that in the case study?
Oh yeah, it says that clearly.
It says this assignment is worth half of the final. It doesn't say the
final. The teacher made it be that way. The district can't do that. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. If the district wanted to, they would not be allowed to do that. The state sets the grading policy. Even the state exam can't count more than 30%.
Dr. Lance, Nathan asked the question.
This much.
Nathan asked that question, is the state standard of 30% universal with all states?
It is in North and South Carolina. It's pretty much. I think 38 have adopted that as the standard. North and South Carolina have.
I know North and South, and I think for most.
38, as the last count, when I went to the last legal seminar, I was great. This is one of those cases from the legal seminar. 38 had adopted a uniform grading policy, North and South Carolina being two of those. So if the teacher wanted to manipulate, can't. It's illegal. The district can't manipulate it. The principal, the school board, nobody at the local level can change the state grading policy. This teacher said, I'm changing it for Bobby. And so that's the part of this that you got to know, that this is where the law was broken. There was a lot of other bad things that happened, but this is where the original sin here was, I reject the state law that all assignments can only count 10% for the year. I reject that. I'm going to make this one assignment, which is one of many, count more than half the grade. I do not believe that I have to follow the state grading policy. I'm going to get my union to back me. Not understanding that 115C288 North Carolina Public School Law, and I think it's 45 in the state in South Carolina, says the principal assign the grades, not the teacher. Nothing in the law that says teacher assigns students grades. Principal assigns grades. And she said, I'm assigning this grade. I'm going to my union. I'm going to make this stick. That's really that's the kernel of truth. That's the crux of this case. And so I'm going to call on somebody in between. That's great questions though. I'm going to go to Dr. Tobias. I already set you up, Dr. Tobias. I told them what you said. I was so impressed with what you said last semester about having a teacher like this on your faculty that would do, in defiance of state law, due process, zero tolerance, don't care, gonna burn the house down. Tell us your thoughts.
Thank you, Dr. Lamb. I just came off a heated debate in my own section. We did the same heated debate. While there are rules and there are legalities, in the end, we have to be reasonable and think about the level of care for students. So if you have something that counts more than 50% for anything, first of all, that's irresponsible. And as a principal, I should know that. That's the first problem. If I don't know that, then there's something wrong with that. I should have seen the syllabus, something to that effect should have come up. that teacher and I would have had to come to Jesus at the end, her rep or not, because there is more underlying than the grade, and her lack of caring for students, regardless of whether the kid blew off the assignment or not, is evident. So she and I had a come to Jesus concerning exactly what does this mean in terms of your rules for caring about students. And for those of you who I've not met, hello, this is the first time I've been able to log on. But it is important as the leader that I set that cultural standard for our school.
And for those of you who don't know, Dr. Tobias is the principal of the year in Durham Public City Schools. She's principal at the City of Medicine High School in Durham, North Carolina. Yay! She is newly appointed principal of the year in that district. So she's the real deal. And we're lucky to have her with us and working with us. But I'm so glad she could join us tonight.
Dr. Land, Tracy asked a good question. She said, would that be considered a write-up, based on what Dr. Tobias said, would that be considered a write-up for that teacher?
Absolutely. She broke state law. I would move for her dismissal. Nobody can give you permission to break the law. My suspicion is, don't know this, that this wasn't her stated policy in the syllabus, or I would have caught it, because I would have read that.
She's just mean, and she doesn't need to be teaching children.
That's exactly right. She's just mean and doesn't need to be working with kids.
Me, it would be if it was a consistent pattern of behavior. Dr. Lamb is rough, and he can say what he wants to say. I need my job, but it would be a consistent pattern of behavior. But where there's smoke, there's fire.
And there probably would be a consistent. Once you start looking, that's probably not the only child.
And that's part of it is she's worked her way up to Bobby. Usually people like this started on kids that are the fringes of society and the ones that drop through the crack. But she's worked her way all the way up. She's she's going for the king now. She's going after Bobby, who's his uncle's on the school board and the big donor. She's going after him. She's going for the kill. She's going to be in charge in that high school. But along the way, how many that the road along the way is littered with the bodies of little kids that didn't matter. And that's the part that chokes me up and makes me mad as fire.
And that's what Kayla just said. She said some kids just don't have an advocate. This kid just happened to have
That's exactly right.
But a lot of them don't, and those are the ones that fall by the wayside and they're hurt.
That's exactly right. That can never overcome it. I mean, if you would try to do this to Bobby, I know this is not your first time out. But see, I couldn't live with somebody doing something, manipulating and being that dishonest. I just couldn't.
Well, you need to remember, when you become principals, your first responsibility is to be an advocate for children, and then teachers after that. But your first responsibility is for the child.
That is correct. Now, I know you can't do it in high school. I didn't. I probably should have been better at it than I did. But now, one of the things that I do have the opportunity to do now, because we only, we have a lot of sections in MELS, but we only have 5 different courses. They're double courses. Is that I have editorial control of the syllabus, and so I know what goes in it. I know what the grading policy is and the points and those things, because we get. I serve on the university's committee for appeals, for academic appeals, through the EPSC. Educational Policy Committee for the college. I sit on their appeal board, and I see way too many appeals. I get an appeal 1 or 2 a day, almost every day. I'm on a 3-person panel for the university. 1 from the graduate, that'd be me. 1 from nursing, and 1 from undergraduate, the dean of the business school. And the 3 of us make up the appeals committee. And I can't tell you the number of times that I see all the students appeal based on the instructors don't even follow their own syllabus. And they manipulate. So this is a more common thing than I would like for us to admit, that even though we have a standardized syllabus and we say that we're going to do it this way, we don't. And so we have to make sure that we know why people are doing what they're doing, and if their heart is bad, I was famous for come to Jesus meetings, what we now call critical conversations, but I would have to do more than that. I'm afraid. This one is unconscionable to me. All right. So next up, we've got Tina and Danelle and Casey and Laquetta. Anybody got anything you want to add? I love the little cartoon here. What do you mean I got all my facts wrong? Everything right off the internet. I love that.
I think everybody have really did a great job with summing up. I think what I liked about what we talked about was, just some questions that you can ask yourself, especially as new administrators, about the ethical paradigms, just to kind of keep yourself in check, especially being new. And I would suggest that some of these older administrators and older teachers keep themselves in check too. But just as a personal experience, my son experienced this last semester in his senior year. A teacher said that he was cheating. The teacher was not there. Another teacher sub was there, who said there is no way he was cheating, but the teacher just insisted on that he was cheating and wanted to fail him for that whole semester there. And me being mom, and my husband, we got ourselves a lawyer. My godfather is an attorney. And we went, and I went all the way through, out from the school board, from the principal to the school board to the superintendent, because I wasn't playing. And, just to see that this do happen. And sometimes in the case, the administrator didn't know she was new, and she didn't really know how to handle it. So she was more on the teacher side, until we had to get down to the get down of law to tell her, no, ma'am, this ain't how this roll. This is, some suggestions. And the strange thing was that we found out that when he went to his next classes this semester that just ended, that one of the things that we had to address is another teacher confronting him and said, "Oh, I heard that you was a cheater." And so then I had to go back and confront that within that school. So, it do happen. And I just think we as beginner administrators really need to know, how to address things. And if you don't know, find out, have you that group of peers that can kind of help you along your way. And then, because I realize that sometimes it's an issue within even the staffing, because if you got one bad apple, it will ruin the whole bunch. So you have to deal with the bad apple so that thing won't continue to go throughout your building, and then you have more problems, and it end up, instead of that snowball, it end up being a snowman, and then you in a world of trouble when you didn't have to do it if you just would have dealt with what needs to be done. So I just think we just need to kind of make sure that we follow these ethical paradigms, and then kind of ask these questions to make sure we stay true to the children that we love and that we serve, and the reason why we got in this field from the start.
That's excellent. Excellent. And remember, nobody can give you permission to break the law. You've got to follow the law. In 1997, in the spring, there was a major redistricting in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. And so in our high school, where I was high school principal that fall, we got completely new, we changed out everybody. It was during the magnet school era, and Dr. Murphy was superintendent, and we became a midpoint school. We had a magnet on either side. And so we got pretty much a whole new population overnight. We changed 3,000 students. And the first thing that the faculty chair came and said at the first faculty meeting is we want our students back. And I said, what do you mean? Well, these are our students. No, we want the ones we used to have back. Well, that's not going to happen. Now, I don't know that they had any affinity for those students, but what he was saying to me is we can love the white kids we gave up. We're not sure if we can love the minority kids that we got in return. And as I found out, that's exactly what that was. And so sometimes we can't find it in our heart to do what we're paid to do, which is love and protect these children. And you're going to have people like that on your faculties, unfortunately. It's your job to put your biases aside, whatever they are, and find a way in your heart that care or that ethical paradigm, as Quetta was talking about, you got to find in your heart to do the right thing. That's why we always not only look at the law, we look at the ethical paradigm as well. That's a great catch. That's a great point out on this case. This is about who you are and what you want your school to be. That's what it really boils down to. But that's a good job on that one as well. Let me see, we're going up to, okay. Juliet, are you still with us?
Yes.
You have anything that you would like to add? Y'all hit all the right notes as well. Let me get over here to the bottom. We'll change it up again next time, so if they get to go. All right, so here we go. So Juliet, what are your courses of action or course of action here?
So this was not my slide. We had broken up slides, but I could just run through it.
Sure.
Please free anybody jump in.
Yeah, anybody.
Okay.
Go ahead, Julia. If you want to run through the course of action, I'll chime in about the precedent piece.
Okay.
I'll jump in too, okay. I think everybody really covered most of it, but basically, the Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, you can look at that to determine the consequences for the infraction.
Right.
Sorry?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I meant to have that pulled up for when I have, but yes, you got to go to your code of conduct.
Okay. And determine if the teacher's suggested course of action is in accordance with published consequences for plagiarism in this case. And also you could ask a teacher to draft a referral for the infraction and contact the parents regarding the matter to give them an opportunity to talk, because, you know, parents are still #1 advocate for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Katie.
So just the final bullet point, deliver recommended published consequence for the infraction. In our group, we had lots of good debate and collaborative dialogue and inquiry about this, and went round for round. And what it kept coming back to each time is, what is the published course of action and what is precedent setting here? So Dr. Lamb, could you find our slide? I think it's either 3 or 4, the one where it talks about arbitrary and capricious.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we kind of went over this idea of keeping it grounded in, you know, what's published and for rules and consequences rather than individual opinion. Principal having the responsibility to ground all decisions in those rules and procedures and adhere to those published consequences. And what we really got into is this idea of grounding in precedent. So if the principal were to make a decision outside of what is the level 1 consequence or whatever the level of consequence in this case, he or she has now established a precedent where when and if this happens again, and it absolutely will, that this now becomes the standard. What all parents are going to keep coming back to, and this is just going to keep becoming a problem for that principal.
Right.
And then a kind of final piece that's different. You know, everybody did a wonderful job. I've learned so much from all the different opinions on each case. But one of the ones, if you'd skip down, I think it's in 5, Dr. Lamb.
Got it.
All right, let me take a peek, make sure that's the one. And looking at under profession for the 4 ethical paradigms, we kind of looked at it through the lens of undue pressure and things that principals are put upon in situations like this. For instance, in the situation where the superintendent seem to lean on the principal a little bit in terms of, well, hey, listen, you need to consider the family in this case. And the principal's really, in our opinion, the only course of action there would be to follow a published course of action according to district policy and guidelines, regardless of what any pressure that the superintendent or anyone else is putting on the student here. And that again goes back to establishing precedent.
Can the superintendent change the principal's grade?
I don't believe so.
No, he can change principals, but he can't change his grade.
Yeah, because I would imagine that the superintendent is under the same policies and guidelines as the principal would be.
Principal has complete authority to assign grades in North and South Carolina.
Grade and classify.
The superintendent cannot change their grade. Now, the superintendent can fire them and get another principal, but he can't change the grade.
Right.
And he can hire somebody who might give a different grade, but he can't do that.
Yeah. And just on a final anecdotal note, I taught at this school. It's where my daughter goes. We have Bobbies all over the place and Bobbies uncles all over the place. And it was a constant battle. And from English teacher to English teacher, fighting the battle of plagiarism, each his or her own way, it led to one conflict after another.
Yeah. So what I ask students here, and I'll kind of get to the end here. Are you the kind of person that pulls the Band-Aid off a little bit at a time, or do you just jerk it right off? The notion here is I prefer just get it over with. I'm the kind of person who's not smart. I'll just go headlong into this one because I'm not going to deal with this every week, a little bit at a time. I'm going to take my whipping up front. I'm going to jerk the Band-Aid off all at one time.
Me too.
But some people, I just want to do a little bit, and I don't. But you're exactly right. Katie's right. You're going to deal with this every week if you don't. When you set a precedent that you're going to have to deal with this every week, and so I'm going to deal with it one time. After that, I'm not going to keep on plowing the same ground over and over, whatever metaphor you want to use. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Every district has a code of conduct that's been adopted. And most of them, as I said in the introduction to this case, is that I don't know of any that there's any more punishment other than 1 day of ISS as a level 1 offense. That's the most you can do. And you may or may not fail and be able to make up the activity. Again, I want to be clear. It does not say that you may fail for the year if you plagiarize an activity. It says you may or may not fail that activity, that assignment. And so, yes, we do have to stop cheating, but we need to do it in a way that's restorative. It goes back to, and I kind of set this one up. Aren't you impressed with me? I kind of set this one up from the very beginning when we talked about keep students in class from discussion board 5 with Stephanie's answer, restorative justice. We're trying to keep kids in school, not exclude them for a year or make them go to summer school as a makeup. We're trying to keep kids in. Mm-hmm. And then over cheating on one class assignment, which it's important, we shouldn't allow cheating, but that's a that's a lot. It's not a little too much. That's a lot too much. So our last group for tonight, and thank you for being patient, is Carrie, Melissa, Anthony,
thank you,
and Amy. Anybody have anything on this one? Let me get down here. Excellent slide here as I was reading through this one. I'll let you pick it up maybe here.
Carrie, are you there?
Yeah, I had to unmute, sorry.
Hey,
so the way we looked at the 4 ethical paradigms is for the paradigm of justice is to remember how the principal must be fair and equal, and to look at how he's handled previous incidents like this in the past. It needs to have a plan to offer due process to Bobby with a meeting that includes the parents and the teacher. And then we talked about if Mr. Davidson were to take Mr. Michael's position and influence into consideration when making his final decision, that'd be a direct contradiction of the paradigm of care. And then for critique, we said that per the paradigm of critique, the principal should not allow Bobby's status in the community to impact his actions and decisions, and instead he must focus on what's best for the student regardless of his social and athletic standing. And then per the paradigm of profession, the principal must be transparent, ethical in the decisions and focuses on Bobby's best interest.
Mm-hmm.
So here we've really kind of listed out what the principal's course of action should be after he collects the necessary data. Of course, we would like to see the project rubric and have a discussion with the teacher about the standards that she is assessing with the assignment, and possibly encourage her to come up with an alternative assignment and give Bobby a chance to show his knowledge of those standards in another way. The principal would also want to collect the grading policies and the timeline of events. Review the school policy and make sure the teacher understands the school policy and other cases that may have happened in her class. As all of us have mentioned, this is Bobby's probably not the first kid to have this situation arise. There needs to be an impartial hearing with all the relevant stakeholders, and we haven't really talked a lot tonight about the parents, but the parents need to be a part of this discussion so that they understand what's happened with Bobby. He has admitted his error, but the parents need to be involved in that conversation as well, and hopefully through some sort of group meeting, including the teacher. And then finally, make the decision that we've all pretty much discussed already, that you cannot fail a child for one assignment. And I think everyone else has discussed everything else, Dr. Lamb. So I think
we beat this one. I think we beat this one soundly about the head and shoulders. So one last thing I want to look at, and I had it in here for this reason, if I can see, let's see. 2, 1, 5 should be here. The code of conduct, and if we went to the code of conduct, all of you have one for your districts. You're required to have one, and if we went, we would start with, is cheating a disciplinary infraction? And of course, we would find out that it is. Misrepresentation, i.e. cheating, Rule 6. And we would find that
Dr. Lamb, while you're looking, Julia asked a good question. She said, should they assume that the future case studies are occurring in North Carolina and South Carolina?
Always, that they're happening in your district. I might have not been clear in that. That's a good question. Assume that they're happening in your district. Remember, things change from district to district, state to state. Assume they're happening where you work. That's why we had you ask about hiring in your district, about discipline at your school. I mean, assume that the case study is at your school. All right, and so cheating in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, Tier 1 response, and then maximum for that. But for cheating, the actual is the Tier 1, which is, that's the most you can do on cheating. And so, unless it's multiple infractions or something big, other students, like if they steal the state exam and pass it out, that'd be a Tier 3. But on an assignment, it's a Tier 1. Most you can do on a Tier 1 is 1 day of the most is there's no days ISS. So the most you can do is 1 day of in-school suspension is the most you can do on a Tier 1. Right here it is, in-school suspension, 1 day. There's a lot of other things you could do. Mediation, as somebody said tonight. Behavior contract, restorative justice. A lot of different things that you can do. Doesn't have to be even a 1 day out of school suspension, but that's the most in-school suspension, but that's the most you can do. we don't even exclude kids for bringing weapons. So back to that. All right, does anybody else have anything else? Did, let me move this out of the way and stop my share and see who we got. We got anybody left? I don't know if we got anybody.
Dr. Lamb, I responded to one group that had not, and I told them, I said, if you didn't get them this time, you get them next time.
Yeah, well, we'll rotate. I kept a list tonight, and I picked the one that I liked the best, and they went first. But I'll pick somebody else next time, and everybody gets your chance to shine before we get done. We've got 4 of these, so you'll get your chance to shine before it's over with. Thank you for being patient. I've tried to do breakout rooms with this, but sometimes those discussions kind of get off on tangents. I prefer to have everybody. I know it's a long night, and everybody didn't get to talk as much as they wanted to, but you will. But thank you for being patient. Thank you for the hard work that you're doing. As I said, I feel guilty about taking money working with y'all this summer. It ain't much, but it's more than I'm getting more than I'm worth in terms of you folks are doing such a good job, but you're doing a lot of this because of your own industriousness. I understand that, but you've had good training. You know what you're doing. You're not struggling with the process. I told you it'd get easier once you got the process down. Now you're just working on content, just getting better, honing your skills, putting tools in your toolbox, and that's what's important. And you're asking good questions. You're thinking. I appreciate Eric tonight, devil's advocate. Think. Work your way through these things. But a great job tonight. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to next week. We'll move on to week 5. Go ahead and start working on your next case study, which is coming up in 2 weeks. All right. Anybody else have anything else? All right. I will see you all. Thank you all. Dr. Stedman, Dr. Tobias, I don't know if Dr. Massengill made it with us tonight, but thank you all for coming out. I will see you all next week. Have a good evening. Tracy, I'll stay on with you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, and then Nathan's signing out right now. Have a good evening, Nathan.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let me stop the record. Let me stop the record.